Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports came out with an article last night that stated that LSU is prepared to offer Lane Kiffin around a 7-year contract worth of $90 million plus. Brandon Marcello came out today and said sources, actually that contract's going to be a little bit more. It's going to be a 7-year, $98 million contract that's going to be offered to Ole Miss head coach Lane Kiffin. So On3 came out in the middle of all that and said all three schools are prepared to offer Lane Kiffin a $13 to $14 million a year deal with $25 million plus of roster monies to have, whether it be NIL, TV, or revenue, what have you. So where are we at the current moment with Lane Kiffin? Guys, listen, we need to kind of back up a couple of days to talk about what has happened here so we can kind of encapsulate all of this. Number one, on Thursday, we came out here and I said, listen, there's a big decision going down on Friday per Ole Miss. An ultimatum had been set for Lane Kiffin for a Friday meeting with Keith Carter and the chancellor of Ole Miss to make a decision about his future. In the discussion that you and I had, the thing that I came back to the most about Friday was I'm going to have to see them fire him. Right? There's this big, bad ultimatum that Ole Miss has given. You walked out there with your chest poked out. We're not going to let him do that. We gave him an ultimatum. All right, sounds good. Well, I don't think that you can suspend him legally, and I don't think that you have the balls to fire him this past Friday. They didn't. They did not. And like we talked about pretty much kind of all week, but especially on Thursday, I'm going to have to see them fire Lane Kiffin, a head coach that had brought an Ole Miss to 10-1. You're an Egg Bowl away from going to the playoff. Even if you lose the Egg Bowl, I mean, I still think they're going to let you go into the playoff. Regardless of all of that, I need to see you do it. And the truth of the matter was Ole Miss did exactly what I thought that they were going to do. They backed down. We will make a decision on the Saturday after the Egg Bowl. Lane Kiffin will give us his decision the Saturday after the Egg Bowl. More on that in just a moment. What are you doing? You can't go out there if you're Ole Miss. And let me tell you something. If I were an Ole Miss fan, I would be pissed. Yes, I'd probably be pissed at Lane Kiffin. I get that level of it, of why they should be pissed off about that. I wouldn't even be pissed off about that part specifically. I would be just as upset from Keith Carter going out there and leaking that you had given Lane Kiffin an ultimatum, and then you had this meeting with Lane on Friday. Lane Kiffin called your bluff in reference to you firing him or not letting him coach, and you backed down. So it's not just Keith Carter. The chancellor was in there as well, and you backed down. You backed down. So regardless of all of that, if that were LSU, quite honestly, I would have struck up a live show and I would have come out here calling for your termination. You can't go out there and saying you're gonna make him an ultimatum and you're not gonna back down only to back down. That shows a lack of leadership. That shows a lack of not really understanding and bluffing. And then when your bluff got called, it's like being at a poker table with 007 and you have no idea how you just lost all of your money. You have no idea how Sean Connery just took all of your money because he knew that you weren't going to do shit. Now, this is not about Ole Miss, but I think it plays a massive factor here. So what has happened since Friday after Ole Miss released that? There seems to be a lot of public pressure coming down on Ole Miss, and especially athletics director Keith Carter, on do not let him coach the Egg Bowl. If he is not going to commit moving forward, let him go. Now, I want to say this before we move on. Ole Miss, their thought process on this is backwards. Their biggest leverage in all of this was the one thing that Lane Kiffin wants. That is to coach his team throughout the playoff. Let him. Because the longer this goes, Florida and LSU might spook. And they might go in different directions. And you get to keep him unless he makes the decision. Put the decision all on him. You want to leave? Go right on ahead. It's your job as an athletic director, behind the scenes, having conversations about replacing Lane Kiffin, even if it doesn't happen. Kind of like what Florida State's doing. Oops. Did I say that out loud? Yes. You know, when Verge Alsbury was appointed, he stated that you always have a short list of coaches that you would want to go after. Keith Carter, I know you were 10-1 and never thought you'd have to do it, but it's the golden rule. When LSU and Florida fired their head coaches, what did you think was going to happen? What did you think was going to happen here? So let's move into what happened last night with Ross Dellinger. On Thursday, the second thing that we talked about is what Ross Dellinger reported on. So basically, Thursday's show was a prequel to tell you exactly what was going to happen. Basically, we gave you the book Cliff Notes version of how all of this was going to play out. 1 for 1 so far. Let's go for 2 for 2 because here we go. LSU is set to prepare to make Lane Kiffin the highest paid head coach in the country. And guys, if this got pushed to about $15 million a year, I don't know if LSU bats an eye. Now, I'm not saying I agree or disagree with that. What I am telling you is something that I have heard from probably a couple of Thursdays ago when we came out here and said, hey, man, I'm starting to gain some confidence on this Lane Kiffin thing. LSU set to go to 7 years, $15 million per. And I don't know if everybody's willing to do that. Now, the thing that Ross Dellinger, and I suggested all of you just go read it. I'm not going to share the Cliff Notes version of it with you here. But 7 years, 90+ million. Now, Brandon Marcello, who I think Brandon Marcello is a damn good reporter, said it'd be a 7-year, $98 million contract. That coming in the sense of about $14 million a year. So LSU's got about another $1 million to play with before they're like, you're kind of stretching your luck here a little bit on the salary. But here's what I've heard, and I told you then, and then it played out in Ross's article. I don't think I don't think Florida is hitting all of the incentives from a pay increase more than what LSU is. So not only are they going to match everybody, LSU's incentives are more up. Now, I told you, and we'll go 3 for 3 in just here for a minute, and everybody said, well, this wasn't in the article. On 3's reporting. Guys, I continue to hear the biggest problem with Florida right now is that they do not want to completely give control to Lane on the NIL part of things. And that has been a hiccup for them, where it's come from an LSU standpoint, like, hey, man, you want to coach in the playoffs? Go right ahead. We kind of want an answer, though, but go ahead. You want this much money in NIL? All right, let's go do it. You want to be the highest paid head coach in the country? Fine, let's go do it. Where it seems like Ole Miss and Florida, from an NIL perspective, don't completely have the luxury of what LSU's doing. Now, what is Ole Miss's issue? Ole Miss's issue is that their collective and how things are now approved by the athletic commission, which I don't know if a lot of you know about this, but there's now a commission to approve NIL deals. Deloitte is a big part of running it. So in case you don't follow National College Football News, go over to Ruffino and Joe Show and hit subscribe. I highly suggest you do that. So collectives, while now kind of a thing of a past, are coming back through, but the wording's got to be different on how you do NIL deals, and that's exactly how Ole Miss has been doing it. I think Lane Kiffin went into that Friday meeting with Keith Carter and said, do y'all have a plan to meet this $25 million roster limit that everybody else is meeting? And I don't know if Ole Miss said that they had a structure plan that Lane Kiffin believed in. So, as we talked about on Thursday, you are prepared to make him the highest paid head coach. And I do think you'd go more north than Florida. I do think you would go more north than Ole Miss. I don't understand, by the way, the contract from everybody talking about Ole Miss. They said that they would extend him to 2031, a 6-year deal. You can't do that in the state of Mississippi. Like, you can't. Y'all are contradicting yourselves in Ole Miss. Well, it's technically a rollover. Well, the rollover's not on the buyout. So, no, it's not a rollover. LSU is going all in. So, that's the part that we had talked about the most on Thursday. Is, look, if Lane Kiffin accepts the deal at LSU, it's because you put your foot down and said, well, we're just not going to get told no for an answer. I do fully believe that if Lane Kiffin stays or he goes to Florida, it's a personal preference situation. There's nothing else that I think LSU could have done here. I don't really know if LSU feels confident in their backup plans because they've gone all in and they're taking a big risk with it. But Florida has blinked. In the reports, as we talked about on Thursday with John Summerall, I've continued to hear that Florida is also had conversations with John Summerall. Well, Blake, he canceled a meeting. Well, he canceled a meeting on Tuesday. Doesn't mean that he canceled a meeting on Wednesday. And I'm going to leave that there. And let me say this about the John Summerall Florida interview that happened on Wednesday, not the canceled one on Tuesday. I'm not guessing. Because there's one thing that I know. People may lie. Eyewitness account does not. And I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to leave it there. So you can say all the different little things that you want, but Florida said we haven't talked to John Summerall. It's a lie. And I'm telling you for a fact, they have talked to him, and they talked to him last week. They blinked. Not guessing. So, what does all of that mean? Let's look into the future of what could happen here. I don't know if Ole Miss is going to allow Lane Kiffin to coach the rest of the season. Well, Blake, they just said that they'll make a decision after the Egg Bowl. Because there is a lot of public pressure on Ole Miss right now to make a move. I don't know if Ole Miss will. I mean, you don't make a move on Friday. If you make a move Sunday or Monday, God, you're going to look weak. God, you're going to look weak. And Keith Carter, the fans are not going to remember that they were begging you to get him out of there for the Egg Bowl if you let him go, by the way. They're not going to do it. I don't know how this thing's about to go down. It feels to me that this might not make it through the week. I don't know if Lane Kiffin, who's going to be at a press conference on Monday, that is going to be a bloodbath. The toxic level of bloodbath, if he walks into that press conference on Monday at Ole Miss as the head coach, it's going to get nasty. If Lane wanted to stay, he would have said he was going to stay by now. Why would he want all of this circus if he was staying or wanted to stay? To me, again, this feels like it's coming down to LSU and Florida, but the longer he stays, I feel like one of the other schools is going to get left out, meaning when this is all said and done, this is going to come down to Ole Miss or LSU or Ole Miss and Florida. I don't know if this makes it through the week. I really don't. I have no clue how this makes it through the week. Now, as we also talked about on Thursday, I think the calendar, all this whole situation, sidebar, this whole situation is going to force the NCAA to make calendar changes. It's got to. because it's not fair to LSU. It's not fair to Ole Miss. It's not fair to Florida. And guys, quite frankly, it is not fair to Lane Kiffin that he's got to make a decision for his future while he's in the middle of a playoff run. The NFL has it perfectly structured for you and laid out. Well, Blake, it doesn't really meet the calendar year. Well, it's where we are. When you started changing all of these things, or December signing period instead of February, all of these different things completely hurt and crippled the sport. Guys, I'm going to be the one to come out here and not tell you that I'm hearing this, and this has happened. There's a lot of people in this media beat who's telling you, I'm hearing this, and this. And quite honestly, I think they're guessing. Some of them. They don't know how this is going to play out. They can have an opinion. But this shit is going toxic by the hour. It grows toxic by the hour. I will tell you this. Thursday was not really me guessing. I wasn't really guessing in the things that we discussed. It wasn't something that I said, hey, either I'm a lucky son of a bitch or either I'm the luckiest son of a gun alive and constantly kind of talking about this before it goes down, or it's just what we hear that is factual. I don't know if this makes it to tomorrow. I don't know if the whole day goes through tomorrow and this thing's not kind of somewhat resolved to some extent. Because the amount of pressure that's come down at Ole Miss is ungodly. And they have mismanaged this whole situation as an AD standpoint and as a fan base standpoint. If Keith Carter would have said, hey, man, we're going to let him coach the whole way through. Whatever he decides at the end is what he decides at the end. Y'all were talking about building a statue of the dude. A statue of him. And now that you're going through the biggest adversity, you don't want to, the best head coach that you've had since the 60s. I don't know how this plays out, man. I don't. I'd be lying to you if I told you. My opinion is that there's going to be an ungodly amount of pressure within Sunday and Monday, and all hell could break loose. I'm like 50-50 on all hell breaking loose. But as the minutes go by, I get more confident that this thing might just go nuts and nuclear within 24 hours. There could be a chance within 24 hours all hell breaks loose. Or Ole Miss does what has been their pattern. And this fits for me. The other part of this is I feel like Ole Miss, if you're not going to make a decision on Friday, are they going to make a decision now? Are they going to wait until Saturday to ultimately make a decision? Well, it's Lane's decision. Well, no, you've been the big bad wolf talking about the ultimatums. Well, make a decision then, big boy. Going out. I mean, listen, this isn't even an LSU thing. It's not even an LSU thing. Like, guys, if we were Ole Miss right now as a fan base and you kept backing down to this dude, brother, you couldn't do that here. You couldn't do it. And Ole Miss, that's what people talk about. When you try to compare, oh, well, we're more of a modern-day blue blood. No, because LSU fans would have never allowed that to go on. Never. It means too much. We're not going to back down. We'll see, man. Now, listen, we hadn't talked about Florida and all of this. They have just as much level of confidence as you do. Right now, LSU thinks he's coming, Florida thinks he's coming, and Ole Miss thinks he's leaving. That's how it's playing out. Now, the Ole Miss side of things, more than LSU. By the way, sidebar, I am tired of seeing people saying, LSU reporters are saying that it's a done deal. Show me a reporter that says it's been a done deal, please. coming out with contracts is one thing. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. But Ole Miss is saying that they think it's between LSU and them. They think Florida's a distant third. Florida thinks that it's us and Ole Miss and that we are not even relevant to the conversation. About to find out. But you're a week away, no matter what, of knowing who is or isn't going to be your next head coach. Because if you're going after Lane, well, then you'll know by Saturday at the least. You'll know Saturday by the least. Shit, it might break while you're playing a game. Saturday at 2:30. I've heard this. Look, man, before those reports came out, I've heard pretty much the same thing as Ross Dellinger. Just being blunt with you. The only thing that I've heard differently from Ross is that LSU's number's not 25. I've heard it's upwards of 30+ million for NIL and TV revenue. That's what I've personally heard. But also in that article, because I just don't know how this makes it to Friday. I don't. I mean, the good thing is it's Thanksgiving week. Maybe you only got 2 days of media, maybe. Because that locker room is going to be toxic. Lane's getting a bad rap in all of this. He is. But I don't think this is all on Lane. There are some things that I think Lane has done for what it's worth that I would have probably just done the same thing and deflect. Why not? Why not? Because he wants to coach this team. I do think he's changed. Everybody's going to look at that documentary and say he hadn't changed. Yeah, I'm not buying that. I'm not buying it. The thing that I buy is that he is put in between a rock and a hard place, knowing LSU and Florida are better jobs. Because this has been the best coaching job that he's ever done. So